Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Today, I am super stoked to be doing a really cool comparison between a 1979 Kawasaki KZ1000 Shaft and a 2015 Kawasaki Versys 1000. And these bikes, in their day, each one of them represented the kind of the second tier of their manufacturer's touring platform. In 1979, the top dog from Kawasaki was the KZ1000 six-cylinder. This was the lighter weight touring version, and though it's still shaft drive, it used a updated version of the KZ1000 motor, the iconic KZ1000 motor. It was lighter and a little bit sportier than their KZ1300. Likewise, in 2015, the Versys 1000 was kind of their second tier sport touring bike. The Concours 1400 was the top dog, but the Versys 1000 is a lighter weight bike. It also comes with a full luggage like the Concours does, removable luggage. And the Kawasaki Versys is just lighter and sportier. It handles a little bit sharper than the Concours, and it's set up a little bit different. It's set up like an ADV bike, which when you sit on it is much more, the seating position is very similar to the old UJMs. Looks wise, to me, I love the classic lines of the KZ1000 here. I just think it's so beautiful. I love the paint. I think they did such a nice job with blacking out the engine and the fork. The combination of blacked out, and then you have bare aluminum, you have the chrome. I think it's just a great looking bike. The Versys, it has the integrated fairing and the windshield and all that, and on a cold day that offers tremendously good wind protection. I think looks wise, I'd much rather look at the old KZ. What are they like to ride back to back? You know, has there been much progress over the course of time? What's surprising to me is when I was setting up this shot, I'm looking at it, and the Kawasaki Versys looks so top heavy and front heavy in comparison, and this bike actually looks small. It looks like it's a very small bike. And the funny thing is, when you actually ride them, it feels the opposite. This bike definitely feels a little bit more top heavy. The Kawasaki Versys, it feels like the center of gravity is super low, and it's so light and flickable and manageable and easy to ride that it's really surprising. It's probably one of my favorite bikes of all time. Definitely makes the top 5, and it's a real toss-up. I really like the Versys 650 as well, but I definitely see some benefits to the Versys 1000. So let's go for a ride. I'm going to suit up, and we'll ride these two back to back, and I'll tell you what they're like to ride. Kind of the feel of each bike, and kind of where their sweet spot is. Each one of these has a way that it likes to be ridden.
I am currently riding Kawasaki's 1979 KZ1000 Shaft back to back with Kawasaki's 2015 Versys 1000. And really, first thing I'm noticing is how nice this vintage Kawasaki feels. Now, I have done some updates to this bike as far as the suspension goes. I've updated the front forks with progressive suspension. Beyond that, though, it's pretty standard in the suspension department. And then I've also upgraded the brake lines to Spiegler units. And that's something for safety I do on all of my vintage bikes. I've put a little bit wider handlebar on this motorcycle as well, and it gives it more leverage than the stock bar had. It does help it to handle better, especially on these tighter back roads that I like to ride on. It does transition fairly easily from side to side. When I twist the throttle on this bike, it does pick up speed relatively quickly, but it's no match for the 127 horsepower that the newer Versys has. The newer Versys is lighter. It's got significantly more power. I think this bike had around 85 horsepower. And this also is shaft drive, so it loses some of that. But you can still hustle it if you want to on a back road. Carburetion's very smooth. It would be interesting to see how this bike would handle if it had the modern sporting rubber on it and similar tire sizes to the Versys 1000. That would definitely change the handling and change the character of the ride. As long as I keep the pace to a reasonable level with this KZ1000, everything really goes well. If I start to push it, I'm reminded of it feels a little bit on the top heavy side. It feels like it kind of wants to stand up in certain situations, and it just kind of reminds me, hey, you know, back it down. You don't need to be ripping it up that much. Like I say, it just, there's little things. It's nothing really that stands out, but there's just little things that it just takes more mental focus to ride it smoothly and to kind of anticipate what it's going to do than the newer bikes. And even though the new Versys 1000, it has more power, even though it's more aggressive in the way that it even makes power, the bike is actually easier to ride and less mentally fatiguing to ride for long distances. And that actually becomes a little bit of a safety factor on longer rides. A bike that's going to be easy and you feel very confident on, and it doesn't take a lot out of you to ride it, is going to be safer in the long haul. If I were on a route that was more just kind of open, a little bit less shifting intensive, and kind of winding through the countryside, not doing a whole lot of higher speed stuff, this bike would really excel. It is comfortable, the seating position is nice, it's very neutral, and honestly very surprisingly, it's very much like the Versys 1000 in the way that the seating position is. I'm hopping from the Versys to this, and it just feels natural. I'm not having to reacclimate to an odd seating position. The Versys also has nice features like anti-lock brakes and multi-mode power settings, and traction control as well. And so those really kind of cover your bacon when you get into inclement weather or a slick spot on the road that you didn't see. And this bike is very turbine-like in the way that it makes power. It's got a cool jet engine whistle to it, and it just continually pulls. It's never abrupt at all in the way it makes power. It almost is deceptive because it doesn't feel edgy per se, but it does continue to pull hard all the way up through the rev range. And you do, if you're, you know, watching your speedometer, the speed does creep up there pretty quickly. I'm not having to shift a lot because it has decent low-end power. And it pulls nicely out of the corners. I would say power-wise, this thing always has more than adequate power. It's never dominating or intrusive or obtrusive. I've actually owned Kawasaki's KZ1000, and I prefer this bike to that bike, really for the main reason is, as heavy as this bike is, the KZ1000 is on another level. It was the heaviest naked bike produced at like 800 some pounds when it was in naked configuration, and a lot of people added touring stuff to it, so it was just a pig. But even in naked configuration, it wasn't bad when you were on the road, and that motor sounded nice and was very, very smooth. But it was just a very top-heavy bike, and I almost dropped mine several times just moving it in and out of the garage, and I hated it for that reason. And God forbid, you know, you'd hate, that was even taller than this bike too, and you'd hate to be stuck on a, pulling out at an odd intersection and have to deal with all of that weight. And there was a very lazy 2,000 RPM corner exit, and the bike just said, hey, okay, I'll do it. Didn't balk, didn't miss a beat, just pulled away. I'm not getting a whole lot of vibration on this bike, except a little bit at the handlebars. It's fairly smooth through the seat. I certainly wouldn't mind a 6th gear, but the vibration isn't bad as long as I'm not doing 75, 80, and it gets a little bit annoying. Yeah, I think the most amazing thing to me is how the newer bikes combine the just massive performance and ease of use and safety features. And it's not that this bike is unsafe to ride, and I've definitely done some upgrades that make it much safer to ride than it was. But the new bikes are just, man, that Versys is just so much easier and so much more capable. If you did a track day, this bike just wouldn't even be in the same, I don't think it'd be in the same time zone. Not to say that it can't be hustled and enjoyed in a sporting way, but just it's no comparison. But really, on a calm day like this, and the temperature where it is, and you know, high 60s, low 70s, I could ride this bike all day long, and I kind of want to. Just want to enjoy it, kind of cruise down through the countryside, enjoy it for what it is. Yep, this is just a nice place to be. I'm currently riding Kawasaki's 2015 Versys 1000 LT, and I'm riding this back-to-back with my 1979 KZ1000 Shaft. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, both of these bikes are, even in their time frame, they were not the top-of-the-line touring models offered by Kawasaki. In 79 it was the KZ1000, and in 2015 the Concours 1400 was the top dog for Kawasaki. But these bikes are kind of equivalent in the lineup, and it's just really interesting to drive these two bikes back to back. And I just got off the 1979, and I am on this 2015. And what I'm noticing right away is how much lower the center of gravity feels on this bike. It definitely does not feel top heavy. And whereas the KZ1000 Shaft just demanded that you kind of take it easy, it never does anything in a supreme hurry. This bike is just so effortless to ride. The wind protection on this bike is really nice. That's something that in 79 Kawasaki offered a Vetter fairing, and actually my 79 came with it and with the Vetter saddlebags. But I really didn't like the way the rest of the bike wasn't designed for it, and so it kind of sacked out the suspension. It was too heavy for the bike, and it made a bike that's already top heavy even more top heavy, and I just didn't care for that. So plus it looks so much cleaner without that stuff. Wow, that was a 3rd gear turn there. It should have been 2nd, but this thing just accelerated out of that with authority. Both of these bikes have nice low end. They both have big 1000cc Kawasaki 4s, inline 4s. there's no doubt which one has more motor. This bike just cranks. I'm definitely getting more engine heat off of this Versys. It's liquid cooled, and my knees kind of tuck into the sides of the tank, and it really kind of puts them in a pocket of warm air, which is just fantastic on a cooler day. But I definitely feel the heat on a warmer day. This bike does have a gear indicator that was optional, and really the nice thing about this bike is how easy it is to ride, and it doesn't pressure me when I'm going slow. It just rides down the road so smoothly and so nicely and fluidly. But man, when I want to wick it up, it's so easy. And in the corners, this thing is just a marvel. It's got nice transition on and off throttle, insane acceleration out of the corners. It's got the safety of the ABS brakes. And there's a lot of gravel and stuff on the roads right now, so I'm not really ripping it up too much. But this thing is just a willing sport bike. And you can really feel that power from that Ninja motor. It just comes on strong. And you don't have to, I know I'm not coming near Redline right now, but you really don't have to. This thing really comes on strong when you rev it higher in the rev range, and it sounds nice. It's very quiet otherwise, but when you get it on the boil, it really does sound aggressive. And just even at low speed handling on this bike is phenomenal. It's very, very easy, which is really surprising for a tall bike. That just lets you hear what it sounds like when you do get on the throttle. It has a nice intake noise to it. On my 79, I kind of feel like I've got to stay ahead of the bike. I feel like I've got to always be driving it in such a way that I really have to think about, you know, if something would jump out in front of me, how would I get it stopped? And it has good brakes and everything, but it just, everything about it, every move you make takes just a little bit more effort. And really, I think the main difference is just that top-heavy feel. I don't know what magic they did with this Versys, because it's a tall bike and you know, a big bike, but it just, the transitions on it are so nice. It is just effortlessly smooth and easy, and therefore the mental energy and even the physical energy that is going to consume as you're riding are just really low. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. I really enjoy this bike. Don't get me wrong, I love my vintage bikes, and I really enjoy just riding that Kawasaki out through the countryside. And I certainly, man, if looks were the only thing, the old Kawasaki to me is so beautiful compared to this bike. I'm not really a fan of the transformer styling of the newer bikes, and this one definitely is. It looks like something Darth Vader or Batman would want to drive. But it is, I forgive the looks because of how nice it is to drive and how nice it is. I could care less what it looks like when it rides this nice and drives this nice. Yeah, and this Versys, I do have to be a little bit careful because because of the wind protection, you don't feel the speed. And it's very smooth, and you could be doing quite high speeds on it without feeling it. But if you wanted to do a track day on this bike, it would be a hoot. It really would. And you're going to surprise a lot of guys on the super sports, that's for sure. This bike did win Bike of the Year when it came out in the US, and that should honestly tell you something about how good it is. But yeah, it's the kind of bike that I just want to shut up and enjoy it and just go out for a ride, not worry about doing a video, just enjoy and take a day, make a day of it. You don't have to rev it to the moon. It has, you can be lazy with the shifting and it still just has pulls with authority on corner exits. There's 2,000 RPM and no sweat.
I will say this, that though these are both UJMs, they're both universal Japanese motorcycles. They're made to do every type of riding and to do it well. On the older bikes, this 79 KZ1000, it is much more limited in the scope of how it likes to be ridden. It does have a sweet spot. It will do, you know, any type of riding that you want to do, but it definitely has, you know, it kind of has its zone that it likes to be in. And really, I think one of the main things that impresses me so much with the Versys is really, if you are hardcore sport riding it, you'd think that that was its sweet spot. If you are commuting on it, you'd think that that was its sweet spot. If you were touring on it, you think that that's what it did best. But it does all of those things insanely well. It's probably one of the most versatile, if not the most versatile bike I've ever ridden. And I'm just super impressed. I really, honestly, while I have it, I'm looking forward to putting some miles on it. And I know that while I'm riding it, I'm going to enjoy every second of it. Yeah, it's just really cool. Back to back, you know, KZ1000, Versys 1000. They're both big 4-cylinder Kawasaki motorcycles, and they're both just super cool machines. I really love the vintage bikes, but the Versys is good enough that you know, I could certainly just have that in the garage, and there wouldn't be other bikes out there making me jealous as far as just something to ride on a daily basis. It's just phenomenal. So this was a fun comparison. I hope you enjoyed it, and you know, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the line below. And I hope you enjoy this comparison as much as I did. It was a hoot to make. I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.